The wind whispered through the towering pine trees of Pine Hollow, carrying the scent of damp earth and moss. Nora Hale tugged her wool shawl tighter around her shoulders as she followed the narrow trail behind her cabin, a steaming thermos of coffee in one hand and her dog Hazel trotting beside her. It was her favorite part of the morning, the hour before the world fully woke up, when the forest still felt like a secret. Nora wasn't running from anything, but she had left behind a life of noise, disappointment, and shallow connections back in Chicago. 3 years in Pine Hollow had taught her that solitude could be healing, not haunting. She'd built a quiet rhythm. Long walks, painting in the afternoons, reading by the fire, and the occasional visit to town when she needed supplies, or brief conversation. Hazel suddenly stopped, her ears perked and nose twitching. "What is it, girl?" Nora whispered. Hazel growled low and pointed her snout toward a patch of dense underbrush off the main trail. Nora's heart skipped. Bears weren't common this time of year, but it wasn't unheard of. Then she heard it, a faint, gurgled gasp. Not an animal. Person. Dropping the thermos, she rushed forward, shoving branches aside. Her boots sank slightly into the damp ground as she knelt. That's when she saw him. A man, mid-30s maybe, lay curled on his side. His shirt soaked in blood just below his ribs. His skin was pale, lips cracked. His left hand twitching weakly in the dirt. Nora's breath caught in her throat. He was unconscious, barely alive. "Hey, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice trembling. No answer. She placed 2 fingers to his neck and found a faint, thready pulse. Still alive, but for how long? Nora's instincts kicked in. She had no formal medical training beyond a few first aid courses and the countless episodes of survival documentaries she'd watched over the years, but she knew time was crucial. She ran back to the trail, calling Hazel. "Home, Hazel. Go," she commanded, pointing toward the cabin. Hazel hesitated but darted off. Nora returned to the man, scanned his injuries again, and cursed under her breath. The wound looked like a gunshot. Jagged entry, some tissue damage around the side. But no blood trail nearby. Had he crawled here? "I don't have time to ask questions," she muttered, dropping to her knees again. It took nearly all her strength and several agonizing minutes to get him onto an old emergency sled she kept near the trail for hauling firewood. The makeshift stretcher groaned under his weight as she dragged it back toward her cabin, panting and slipping over pine needles and rocks. By the time she reached her porch, sweat dripped from her temples despite the cold. Her arms trembled. Hazel barked from inside the cabin. "Help me, girl," Nora gasped, collapsing to her knees beside the stranger. "Just hang on." She brought him inside and cleared her dining table. Blankets, towels, bottles of antiseptic, scissors. Her trembling hands moved fast, stripping his shirt, cutting around the wound, pressing gauze to stop the bleeding. He groaned. His eyes fluttered open. "Water," he rasped. His voice cracked like dry wood. Nora gave him a sip from a straw, watching his throat bob with effort. Then his eyes met hers, gray, clouded with pain but alert. "Who did this to you?" she asked gently. His lips parted, then closed again. He shook his head faintly, refusing, or afraid. "All right, don't speak. Just stay with me, okay?" She cleaned the wound the best she could. No exit wound, meaning the bullet was still inside. That scared her. Infection was almost certain. But getting him to a hospital was out of the question. The nearest clinic was an hour away, and he wouldn't survive the bumpy mountain roads in his state. Besides, if this was a gunshot, someone out there was responsible. Someone who might be looking for him. She sat beside him through the night, trading warm compresses, checking his breathing, keeping him covered. Her fingers stayed wrapped around his wrist, counting each fragile beat of his pulse. "You can't die," she whispered at one point, eyes wet. "You hear me. I don't know who you are or what happened to you, but please, please don't die." Morning filtered through the cabin's foggy windows as birds chirped softly. The man's breathing was shallow but steady. His forehead burned with fever. Nora placed a cool cloth on it and studied his face. Beneath the grime and stubble, there was something familiar. Not the man himself, but the way his expression tightened in pain. Like someone used to holding things in. Someone who didn't expect kindness. She felt a pang of loneliness. She knew that look all too well. Hazel lay curled at his feet, unusually quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Nora stood, poured a mug of coffee, and looked out the window. Snow flurries had started. If whoever shot this man was still out there, she needed to be ready. And yet, part of her, deep down, already knew that her life had just changed. This wasn't just a wounded man. This was the beginning of something neither of them could walk away from. The cabin was still wrapped in fog when Nora opened the windows the next morning. She had barely slept, just short bursts between checking the man's breathing and swapping damp compresses on his forehead. His fever hadn't broken, but he was alive. She approached the small cot she had set up beside the fireplace, where the stranger lay under a heavy quilt. His face was slightly less pale. The deep wound at his side had stopped bleeding, though she feared infection. She'd cleaned it twice more, using every antiseptic in her limited supply. He hadn't spoken since asking for water. Not a name. Not a thank you. Just quiet breathing and the occasional groan of pain. Still, he seemed aware of her presence. His eyes would open briefly whenever she entered the room, as if tracking her like a wary animal. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat on the edge of the table, watching the fire flicker. "You need to talk to me eventually," she said softly, not really expecting a response. "At least tell me your name." "Nothing." Hazel lay curled up near the stranger's feet again. She hadn't growled at him once. That meant something. Hazel didn't trust easily. Nora looked at the man's jacket, now drying on a chair near the fire. She hesitated, then walked over to it and opened the inside pockets. There wasn't much. No wallet, no phone. But there was a folded piece of paper, soaked with blood. She unfolded it carefully. It was a printed spreadsheet with numbers, dates, and strange acronyms. Military sounding. In the other pocket, she found something heavier, a brass bullet casing. Her breath caught. Why would someone keep a bullet casing in their coat? Unless it meant something. She checked the lining. There, stitched into the fabric, was a barely visible patch. Letters, and beneath it a number. Special Operations Group. She knew enough from documentaries and books to recognize that name. Black Ops, covert missions. People who weren't supposed to exist. She looked back at the man. His arms showed faint scars, some long-healed, others recent. His hands were calloused. Not a civilian, soldier, or something close. But if he was military, why was he bleeding out alone in the woods near Pine Hollow? That afternoon the fever finally broke. His skin cooled and his breathing steadied. Nora was outside splitting firewood when she heard him whisper from inside. "Where am I?" She dropped the axe and rushed in. "You're safe," she said, kneeling beside him. "You were shot. I found you 2 days ago near the creek." His eyes slowly focused. "Creek? About a mile out. You were unconscious. I brought you here." He blinked. "You saved me." "I tried," she said, voice low. "You almost died." He stared at her, as if struggling to process everything. Then he closed his eyes again. She reached for his hand. "What's your name?" "Oz." Then quietly. "Ethan." No last name. Just that. "Ethan." "I'm Nora," she said, watching his face. "You don't have to tell me what happened. But I think someone's looking for you." He flinched and she noticed it. "I'm not going to report you. But I need to know. Are you in danger?" Another pause. "Yes," he said, barely audible. She swallowed hard. "From who?" He turned his head away and shut his eyes again. A wall went up instantly. Nora stood. "Fine. Rest. But if someone comes knocking, I need to know who I'm dealing with. Because right now, you're putting both of us at risk." That night, just after 11, she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Her heart stopped. She grabbed her flashlight and crept toward the window. A dark SUV was parked near the tree line at the edge of her property, headlights off. She couldn't see the driver. Hazel stood, ears back, tail stiff. She let out a low growl. Nora ducked behind the curtain and whispered, "Quiet." The car didn't move. It just sat there, engine idling low, for nearly 5 minutes. Then it reversed slowly, turned, and disappeared down the road. Nora didn't sleep that night. She stayed at the window until dawn, a hunting rifle resting in her lap, her hand wrapped tightly around the trigger guard. The next morning, Ethan was more alert. He tried to sit up, wincing, his arm trembling from the effort. "You shouldn't move yet," Nora said, rushing to help him. He leaned back against the pillows, breathing hard. Someone came. She stared at him. Yes, SUV. No plates. Parked right at the edge of the woods. His jaw tightened. "Who are you, Ethan?" she asked. "Because I can't keep you here if people with guns are looking for you." He didn't answer right away. Then, in a dry whisper, he said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I just found something I wasn't supposed to." "Found what?" Ethan's eyes burned with something deeper than fear. Something like betrayal. "I work security for a private firm. Not government. Not military, just a company that contracts with both. One day I was assigned to do inventory on a warehouse in Nevada." Nora sat, her breath shallow. "I found crates that weren't listed on any manifest. Opened one up. It was full of foreign weapons. Russian. Chinese. Things we weren't supposed to have. Took photos. Sent one to a friend I trusted in D.C. His hands clenched. A day later I was ambushed. Chased through the hills. Ran. I've been running for 6 days." Nora absorbed the words like punches. He continued, "They don't want me alive. If they find me, they'll finish the job." She looked at him, her heart pounding. This was no random hunter shot by accident. Ethan was carrying something powerful and dangerous. "Why come here?" she asked. "I didn't choose this place. I just collapsed. Guess fate put me in your path." Nora stood. "Fate's about to get us both killed." He tried to smile, but it came out pained. "Then let me go. I'll leave tonight." She stared at him, then shook her head. "No," she said. "You're not strong enough. And even if you were, if they find you, they'll come back." He paced, thinking. Then she looked him in the eyes. "We need a plan." Ethan's breathing had steadied by the time the snow began to fall again, covering Pine Hollow in a soft white blanket. The gentle flakes gave the illusion of peace, but Nora knew better. Every creak of the floorboards, every snap of a twig outside made her jump. She sat across from Ethan, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea. Hazel lay between them, her eyes trained on the door. The fire cracked in the hearth, casting orange shadows on the wall. "You're getting stronger," Nora said quietly. "But not strong enough to walk out of here." Ethan shifted slightly, his teeth clenched from the pain. "I have to. I can't keep putting you in danger." "You think I'm the type to let someone bleed out in the snow and then just walk away because it gets hard?" she replied, her voice sharp. He looked at her then, really looked, and his expression softened. "No, I don't think that at all." She didn't answer. Instead, she got up and walked to the window, parting the curtain just enough to peek outside. No cars. No headlights. Just falling snow. "We need to think ahead," she said. "You said you had a contact in D.C., the one you sent the photo to. Can they help you now?" Ethan's expression darkened. "I don't know. I haven't heard from them since. Could be they're compromised. Or dead." Nora exhaled slowly. "Okay. Then we go smaller. Local. The sheriff." He shook his head. "They'll have ears in local law enforcement. These people buy loyalty. Or blackmail it. Then we do what we can from here," Nora said firmly. "I've got a laptop. Satellite internet. It's not fast, but it works. If you can get me anything, photos, names, files, I can help you send it where it needs to go." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. There's a flash drive. I taped it under the inside pocket of my coat. Nora rushed to the coat, carefully peeled back the seam, and there it was, wrapped in duct tape, protected from blood and snow. She handed it to him. He held it like it weighed 100 pounds. If I die, you send this to the Department of Defense. Directly. Not to the media. Not to local agents. There's a woman there, Maggie Groves. Only her. You're not going to die, Nora said. Not if I can help it. Later that night, Nora booted up her laptop and plugged in the drive. The files were encrypted. Ethan, still weak, walked her through the password and decryption tool. Then she saw them. Manifest, shipment logs, satellite photos, documents in multiple languages, and one chilling video clip. Grainy surveillance footage of uniformed men unloading crates from a military truck, then setting fire to evidence. Jesus! Nora whispered. This is huge. Ethan leaned against the table, sweat beading on his forehead. It's a global operation. They're selling weapons through shell companies, some ending up in the hands of groups our government's supposed to be fighting. Nora stared at the screen. You risked your life for this. I didn't plan to, he said. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. She understood. It was the kind of truth that changed people. That demanded action no matter the cost. They stayed up all night. Nora helped compile the files, draft a summary report, and encrypt it again with a new passphrase. Then she sent the package through a secure upload to a contact server Ethan had used before. They waited. The next morning, Ethan was resting when Hazel started barking. Loud, fierce. Nora's stomach turned cold. She grabbed the rifle and peered through the window. Another SUV. Black. No plates. This one was closer. Parked just at the edge of the frozen stream. Two men got out, dressed in dark winter coats. One held binoculars. They were scanning. Nora closed the curtain slowly. They're back, she whispered. Ethan sat up, gritting his teeth. How many? Ooh. For now. They don't send two unless they know I'm still alive. Then we can't wait for more, Nora said. You need to get out of here. Now. I can't outrun them, Ethan said. I can barely stand. Then we'll buy time. She pulled on her coat and hat, grabbed the emergency backpack she always kept ready. Water, food, flares, a knife, a small first aid kit. Listen carefully, she said. There's a game trail behind the cabin that leads into the ravine. If you follow it north, you'll find an old ranger tower. It's abandoned, but it has radio equipment. You might be able to reach someone from there. Ethan grabbed her arm. You can't do this alone. If they catch you, I'll be fine. Hazel and I will lead them in the opposite direction. I'll make noise. I'll give you at least 30 minutes. More if I'm lucky. Ethan's eyes searched hers. You don't even know me. I know enough, she said, voice steady. You didn't ask to be hunted. But you chose to do the right thing anyway. And that matters. He didn't argue. Nora helped him bundle up, slipped the flash drive into a small waterproof pouch around his neck, and wrapped an extra scarf around his face. Then she opened the back door. Go. Now. 10 minutes later, Nora was at the front of the property, rifle slung over her shoulder, walking toward the road like someone who didn't have a care in the world. The two men spotted her immediately. One stepped forward. Ma'am, he said, his accent clean American. We're looking for someone who might be lost in the woods. Mind if we ask you a few questions? Sure, Nora said, forcing a calm smile. I was just chopping wood. Haven't seen anyone. You boys with the Forest Service. The second man didn't speak. He just stared at her. Too alert. Too cold. They weren't forest rangers. Mind if we take a look around? The first one asked, already moving toward her porch. Actually I do, Nora said. She lifted the rifle slightly. You're on private land. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We'll be quick. Hazel barked. The sound of a distant branch snapping echoed through the woods. Ethan was moving. The second man turned. "Get back!" Nora shouted. Then everything happened fast. The second man bolted into the woods. The first lunged toward her. Hazel leapt forward, barking viciously. Nora raised the rifle and fired once, not at him but at the air, loud enough to echo through the trees. The first man ducked, cursed and backed off. She ran into the trees opposite Ethan's direction, Hazel at her heels, crashing through the underbrush, leading them away. Behind her the men gave chase. And somewhere deep in the woods, Ethan crawled toward freedom. The snow had thickened, falling faster, as Ethan stumbled through the forest. Each step was agony. His wound burned and his limbs trembled with exhaustion. But Nora's voice echoed in his mind. "You go. I'll give you 30 minutes. More if I'm lucky." He didn't know how far he'd gone. Time had stopped making sense. He'd fallen twice, using branches and rocks to pull himself upright. Blood oozed slowly through the bandages. But still he moved forward, one labored step at a time. The trees thinned at last, and there it was, a rusted metal silhouette above the trees. The Ranger Tower. He gritted his teeth and climbed. Back near the cabin, Nora's lungs burned as she weaved between tree trunks, firing another warning shot into the air. Hazel barked beside her, fierce and protective, forcing the men to split up. She ducked under a fallen log and slid into the ravine, knees scraping against ice. Every sound in the woods was sharper now, every breath, every crack of twigs behind her. They were close. She glanced back and whispered to Hazel, "Go home, girl." "Oh, find Ethan later." Hazel whined but obeyed, vanishing into the trees like smoke. Nora turned and ran again, knowing she might not make it back. Ethan reached the top of the tower and collapsed on the floor. Wind howled through the broken panels. The inside was coated in dust and mold, but the old radio panel still stood near the window. He crawled to it, flipped switches and waited for static. Nothing. He cursed and slammed the side of the box. A light flickered. He grabbed the mic. "This is Ethan Reeve, former security contractor. I have evidence of international arms violations. I'm wounded. I'm in the Ranger Tower off Route 12, north of Pine Hollow. This is not a drill. Please respond." Crackling. Then, "Reeve, say again, this is Agent Groves. Are you safe?" Ethan choked on a breath. "Groves. It's me. I'm alive. Have the drive. But I'm not alone. They're chasing the woman who saved me." "Understood. Stay put. Help is coming." Repeating, "Help is en route. Sit tight." Ethan dropped the mic and leaned back, tears stinging his eyes. Nora had done it. She had bought him just enough time. In the woods, Nora's foot caught a root, and she fell hard, sliding down a slope. Snow clung to her coat as she rolled and came to a stop near a frozen stream. Her rifle was gone. A shadow appeared at the top of the slope. One of the men. She struggled to her feet and backed against a tree, heart pounding. No more running. He approached slowly, gun raised. "You're tougher than you look," he said, smirking. "But you're done now." Nora didn't move. Her eyes didn't show fear, just defiance. "You won't win," she said. "He got away. And you'll never find him." The man chuckled. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Then a deep, metallic voice boomed through the woods. "FBI. Drop your weapon. On the ground now." Helicopter blades thundered above, and floodlights pierced the trees. The man turned in shock, just as two black-clad agents tackled him to the snow. Another team burst through the trees behind Nora. She collapsed as arms caught her. "It's okay, ma'am. You're safe. We've got you." 2 hours later, Nora sat wrapped in a thermal blanket inside a heated van, sipping from a bottle of water. Her hands were still shaking. A tall woman with sharp eyes and a navy coat entered and sat beside her. "Miss Hale," the woman said gently. "I'm Agent Maggie Groves." Nora blinked. "Ethan's contact." Groves nodded. "He's alive. We have him. He did good. You did better." Nora gave a half-smile. I didn't even know him. Sometimes that's the only reason people help. No politics, no bias, just kindness. Nora looked out the window. Snow was still falling. I thought I'd die out there, she whispered. But you didn't. I only wanted a quiet life. Agent Groves softened. Quiet lives don't make history. But they sometimes save it. She stood to leave, then paused. By the way, he asked to see you. The Ranger Tower had been turned into a makeshift outpost, now glowing with portable lights and humming with quiet activity. Ethan lay on a stretcher, 4 in his arm, oxygen at his nose. He looked up as Nora entered, her face pale but unbroken. She stopped in the doorway. You made it, she said, voice low. So did you, he whispered. Barely. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then he reached out a hand. She took it. I thought you'd leave, Ethan said. I almost did, she replied. But then I remembered what I told you. What? She smiled faintly. Please don't die. He laughed, a dry sound. I'm trying not to disappoint. They sat in silence for a while. Then Ethan added, when this is over, if I make it through the trials and investigations, I'd like to come back. Nora tilted her head. To Pine Hollow. To you. Beep. I make terrible coffee, she warned. He smiled. Good. I like challenges. 1 month later, the headlines read, Whistleblower exposes international arms scandal. Multiple arrests made. Civilian woman credited with saving national witness. Nora closed the newspaper and looked out the window. The forest was beginning to thaw. Hazel barked once, alerting her to the sound of tires on gravel. A black SUV pulled into her driveway, but this one had plates. And a familiar figure stepped out. Ethan. No longer pale. No longer hunted. Just a man with quiet eyes and a grateful smile. She opened the door before he could knock. He looked at her, holding something in his hand. It was a thermos. For once, he said, I made the coffee. Nora laughed and stepped aside to let him in. As he passed her, he whispered one last time. You saved me. Now I came back for you.